This conference will now be recorded.
So we should be good.
We should. I got it. All right, so we want to turn on. Yeah, you got it. So one man.
That's why I gave it a list. But there are others. Talk about it. That's the only one I saw.
All right, y'all ready? Jonathan, you good? Y'all good down there? Hello, how's everybody? All right. Like to call the Board of Supervisors meeting to order. As always, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. We do have an agenda in front of us. I think there's a couple that we should just one we need to correct. And it's not VHDA revitalization grant. It's actually Virginia Housing Revitalization Resolution. And that's just a correction. And then under new business 5A, is RRRC board appointment for Jonathan. We need to take formal action to put him on the RRC board. Anybody else have anything we need to add to this agenda?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. Are you tracking Mr. Blunt's contact information?
Yeah,
For
I'm
the
good
public
on
hearing?
here too, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the agenda as corrected and amended.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. As always, public comment. Public comment. Glad y'all came. We'll do that again. Consent agenda. We have minutes from 9/28/21. Anybody else have anything we need to add to this?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We do have some special appearances. we have the gentleman from Virginia Housing Revitalization Resolution. Understand you all have a presentation. Welcome.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon. I'll be very brief. My name is Wally Robinson. I am Virginia Housing. With me is Frank Quibera. You are correct. We were VHDA. We rebranded ourselves this year for marketing, but recognized by the General Assembly, so it still is VHDA. We are the state's finance agency, if you're familiar with us. Over 180,000 new homeownership programs, as well as our multifamily programs. So tonight, I wanted to kind of mention our mixed use income program. So met with some representatives here in the county and the town interested in our program. So as part of our mixed use income program in financing, we have some criteria that's needed in order to do that. And that is the property be either located in a HUD qualified census tract or QCT, or the city, town, county can recognize that area in an area of revitalization and create a resolution designated in a revitalization area. By doing that, it opens up some finance opportunities that Virginia Housing has created. So I guess one thing, so Virginia Housing, again, we are a quasi-state agency. We use no state funding. The money that we use for our programs is generated from bonds, and we take that money, the money that we make off of our fees, we reinvest that in the community as first-time homeowner down payment assistance, as well as being able to subsidize some of our more mission-driven projects in revitalization of smaller communities. So I've passed out, I think you've got a couple of examples of some programs and some communities that we've done recently in the past, similar to your main street. Taking some residential property, some residential units down on the second floor and bringing back some small businesses to Main Street. So, it's a program that's focused for workforce housing. So this are the people you rely on a daily basis. This are the clerks of the court, your school teachers. It's income qualified for a percentage of the residents. So our program has a requirement that 20% of the units will be restricted to individuals whose income does not exceed 80% of the area's median income. So I think your area is probably around 60, I think it was 61,000, 62,000 is the area median income for Madison. The balance of that 80% units would be at unrestricted market rate. So it's a very flexible program. And again, I want to focus that it's really geared for workforce housing. So again, with that program, that's really our mixed use program. I don't know if you have any questions on the resolution and designated that. So it can be property specific. If the one property we're looking at right now in question, it can be resolution designated that one single property, or you may want to look down Main Street and see if it would benefit bringing other properties in that would qualify for the income, the program as well.
My only kind of question, I guess it's probably to Sean Gregg. The town has its own separate government. I would assume that they would have to pass the resolution.
The town can pass yes. That has since been updated. The town officials are able to pass that resolution.
All right. Other questions, comments, thoughts?
But as a county, Mr. Robinson, if the county passed it as well, then we could designate. I mean, we've got villages, what we call villages within the county.
You could do that, yes.
Crigglesville, et cetera, Etland, and this could be used for that purpose as well.
So this could be a tool for that. Yes, it is as well. So this program that we're discussing is for commercial space as well as residential. I do have another program that's residential only. It would meet that. It would sound more to that.
And how does that usually work? Does a property owner typically come to us or the town, in the town's case, and say, I've got a piece of property that would like for you all to designate as a revitalization area, which would qualify me for programs under Virginia Housing? Or would the town or the county say, we hereby designate such and such property as a revitalization area, and then if somebody All right, so some property that the county owns.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the Craigsville School. So if we as a board would designate that as a revitalization area, then if somebody came in with a proposal or a plan to do something with that property, we could say, go talk to Wally Robinson at Virginia Housing, and there's a program there that would assist in with your vision.
Yeah, I think that's one of the means of doing so. Another means is with our impact planning grants so that the town could access, that you could create a town hall meeting, bringing in some of the local property owners together and creating a plan of downtown revitalization. And with that, we've had some grant programs that would be able to meet with some architects and design. So those are grant programs. Frank could probably explain more to the limits of those grants, but I believe they're up to 100,000. Some of those planning grants would help with market studies, doing some reconnaissance on some of the existing buildings, getting some structural engineers out, getting some architects out, and some design and everything, and seeing if it's something, this school that you're referencing, getting some preliminary designs out there and helping you put an RFP together to getting some individual developers interested in maybe bidding on the project.
So there's grant money available to get that started.
That sounds good.
So we do have that, and a third piece we have is some pre-development loan money. So that's really going to be more focused to your developers and your property owners. If you have some for-profit property owners that are interested in developing a piece of property here downtown, we have a 3-year no interest loan. That's up to 100,000 as well. And again, that's going to pay for their due diligence and environmental studies and architectural designs, meeting with attorneys. And that's your school teachers, that's your sheriff's deputies, anybody.
We have a fine school. I think we should designate it immediately.
Yeah.
All right. What projects have you done close to us, I guess?
Again, the ones that you just completed, the one I just completed that you have a copy of would be Big Stone Gap Pharmacy. So that was a unique, that was an older pharmacy in the community that the housing authority was able to acquire. Working with the town, they were able to secure, they've got a large restaurant that was able to survive COVID. They created 3 apartments on the second floor, and the basement has been renovated into a banquet space and some flex office space that town individuals are able to rent daily or on a monthly basis.
Chairman, to your question, the light well in Orange
Yeah.
was a program that was about 15 years ago. It wasn't this program, it was a comparable program.
All right. Thank you.
So does Virginia Housing still own that property?
So
you talked about?
we don't own it. We do keep, they're in our portfolio. I believe that is still in our loan portfolio. So we do not sell our loans. We originate the loans. They stay in our portfolio. We have asset managers and compliance officers that will work with the property owners.
So Tracy, both of you gentlemen have met Tracy before. So, and for the rest of the board, see, these gentlemen came to Skyline a few weeks ago, and Tracy came up. And so we had a round table for a couple of hours. So I think a lot of the details of the programs that are available, which there are a number of them, they are numerous. I think Tracy is either familiar or has got the details on.
Now there's, in a limitless, there's a lot of different resources available between Virginia Housing and our state agency, DHCD. I think that you said you're Main Street participant, but between the two of us and grant petitions and opportunities and revitalizing it.
But let me ask one more question then. So the revitalization situation, once a body like the town council or the board of supervisors passes that resolution, then the county or the board is out of it.
That is correct. At that point, that property and any property that you've created in that map, that those parcels are included in that for revitalization. It doesn't have any, it should not have any impact on your tax basis. It's not going to devalue the property.
Mhm.
I mean,
You should actually go the other way.
it should,
Yeah.
it should, because it's going to open up the opportunity. The program, again, the big thing about the program is that it's offering non-recourse lending, a 90% loan to value with interest rates that are, below 2% in some instances.
Aggressive.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So I'm looking at the resolution. Put this in your packet generally for information purposes, but anytime you meet, you can take action. My question is, in your resolution as it's drafted, is it normal for the board would pass it once they designate an area? Because that needs to be a part of the exhibit.
Yes, I think we would want to attach that to an exhibit once you determine the footprint of your revitalization area,
Thank you, sir.
unless
So
you
what-
want to be specific to one parcel.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, just your preference, if you know tonight, or if you would like to come back with a list of those areas so we can target that, Mr. Greg and I can wordsmith the resolution to fit that and then present it to you all as an action item, whichever direction, Mr. Chairman, you wish to go.
I mean, yeah,
To Mr. Wheaton's point, I think one path moving forward on this would be to coordinate with Ms. Gardner, determine what our footprint looks like, because it's probably not going to be a contiguous footprint. And if we do it that way, I would suggest making sure that we have plenty of advertising and possibly even holding a public hearing on this, just to make sure that we get some community buy-in, because this could be a very powerful opportunity for the county and for the town and maybe for the within as well.
but with this resolution, we can identify multiple different areas.
That is correct.
Just attach them as.
So
exhibits
you
as
you
well.
could do two different resolutions. You can do one property specific right now, if that would move
All right.
Skyline along, and then you can come back. You may want to have a town hall meeting, bringing some property owners in to see how broad you want to make this.
Now, Skylines, that is located
It's in town.
in town. Okay.
Yeah, so,
How's that going?
we're getting there,
Oh, yeah.
right, Kevin? It's a slow process, but I attended the town council meeting Thursday, and I asked if one of them would come tonight. Doesn't seem like they've made it,
No.
but we will
Yeah.
speak with them. And when I put my Skyline hat on, the next board meeting, we'll have to talk about that.
Are they still working on the Airbnbs?
No, we're
Oh,
doing,
no,
we're doing,
Not Skyline, I'm talking the town.
the town.
They got past that. All right, good. Now we can move into something new. This looks like a great opportunity. I mean, there are a lot of areas that I wouldn't describe them as blighted, but that have challenges
Yeah,
drawing investors to them. And going down this path may be a super viable option.
unfortunately, the language is General Assembly used maybe is a little harsh
Yeah.
and blighted, but I think we all understand the properties
Absolutely,
we're referencing.
absolutely.
Okay.
Let's see if we can identify some and go down the path. I think having the public hearing is a pretty good one, and we know that there's a handful of investors that are local. Then this may work out well for
That we'd be happy to come back to that
us.
if you speak with some of the investors and go in a little more detail with some of our grant programs.
Tracy? Yeah, good. You have anything to add about this?
I think I asked, because I wasn't thinking about the county property that day. Can this be used with a brownfields grant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Brownfields was in I've used that in several projects. I know that the Big Stone Gap property had brownfield money. They had probably 7 different sources, DHCD, brownfield, coalfield money, Appalachian coal money. So there was, brownfield money at the time. I mean, I know there's some restrictions of what that can be used for. Sure.
Thank you.
One more question, Mr. Robinson. So what is Virginia Housing's annual budget? Just to let everybody know what size organization you're talking about.
We've got over $2 billion in single-family loans right now, and I think last year we generated over 1 billion in multifamily loan program origination.
How many people work with your group?
Yeah, we're growing leaps and bounds. We now probably have, I'm going to say probably 450 plus. I know that we hired 70 contractors for we're working with the HCD. We're doing the rental relief program.
Okay.
So we've got subcontractors working then. I think it was at least 70 hired for that. So
Ligon?
You might remember, I think it was a year ago, we adopted the revitalization area of Courthouse Mountain Road for that
Yeah.
project that was just sort of went away.
Yep.
So if anyone comes in with an idea and wants to do the, I guess it's the low LHITC.
no, that's a different program. So that is a low-income housing tax credit program. That's the federal program that we administer for the state.
Okay.
So that's typically serving income limits 60% and below. But that's a very competitive program. I'm trying to think where the nearest. I know there's several in Charlottesville and different surrounding. Orange has got some low-income housing tax credit programs. But that's a totally different program. That's using federal money used working with some investors.
All right, other questions, comments, thoughts?
We might just have to get them back up here again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, please get your community together if they want to have talk about some investment.
I mean, essentially, is trying to get some type of engagement going with this group. Is it something that we could go ahead and start to identify potentially Kriglersville School as a area, or Kriglersville and some other areas, so that we can try to get something going on with this?
I agree. If you think of a area in the county, that whole Banco area going back, it was thriving. I like to think yesteryears. That's one that comes right to mind.
Greystone.
I'm just wondering, yes.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there are others that we, kind of need to shake the tree on to make sure we include it.
The only reason that I even bring up that we should probably kind of get this thing going is it would be nice to encompass all areas with one proposal, but trying to get something simple that we can manage where, frankly, it's just us. It's not including the town at all. I think that it would be great for the town. I'd like to work with this group and the town council and try to get something going on that as well. But if we could come up with some type of proposal to at least engage and pass a portion of this resolution, maybe we can not have another county administrator that passes along Kriglersville to the next guy. John is going to be with us for 20 years. So, we've got a lot of time on that Kriglersville deal. 25. There you go. Good. I think we should start to identify something and bring it back for an action item.
So if the idea is to move it forward, we can definitely zoom in on the Banco Kriglersville area. Mr. Greg and I can work together to wordsmith. I don't think it's a bad idea to pass it off to Wally and his team for one final look and bring it back to the board action, say in November.
Absolutely. I think that the other portion of this, if at all possible, let's say you all identify a couple areas, use the Banco area and Kriglersville area, because that would encompass the school, of course. Bring it back to us in October. But I think this is one that, since you are talking about private owners, that we would maybe hold a public hearing in November so that we could have people, if they feel inclined, to come in and talk to us before we pass a resolution.
Mr. Chairman, forgive me for my simplistic. So what I just heard was bring this back with the Kriglersville model, second meeting in October, and then look to have a public hearing to see if there's any other properties or areas to move forward with a separate resolution.
Yeah, that's better than what I said. Yeah, that'll work. That's a good plan.
Okay. I've learned to summarize just to make sure I have direction. So thank you.
No, let's do that.
And with that, again, we've got our planning grant. You keep referencing the school. I know we've talked about that. So maybe the planning grant would be something that you could use in moving that forward.
Absolutely.
So I think we have the gist of it. Wally, you and I can have some conversation.
Sure.
And Sean and Tracy and I can put our heads together as well. I appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all very, very much. Appreciate it.
We're going to depart.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
If you're hungry, make sure you eat in Madison on your way out.
Oh, they've already cruised county.
Not a requirement to apply for the grant, just a suggestion.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was good. All right. Hurt and Profit Site Study Presentation. Patrick, Please come on up.
Well, good evening, members of the Madison County Board of Supervisors. It's good to be here tonight. My name is Patrick Profit, and I have here Zach Johnson as well with Hurt and Profit Engineers out of Lynchburg, Virginia. And I just want to say we really appreciate the opportunity to come up here and actually present this study. We do a lot of these, but a lot of times we don't get an opportunity to present them in person. So again, we really appreciate you making time in your agenda to allow us to come up and meet with you and talk a little bit about it. When I had the original discussions with the previous county administrator, we talked about a number of things, like what are in these studies. Again, we do a number of them. So we've identified 6 or 7 items that we'll talk a little bit more about in the presentation that we always include in these site selections. So it's part feasibility, discovery, due diligence process that we look at as we, again, look at site selections and give that information. Now, he was also very clear that when we do this, we were not to draw any opinions, conclusions, or make any recommendations, but just report the facts to you, the stakeholders, so that you can make an informed and objective decision based on that information. So I think we've done that for you here. And Zach will actually, he will do the presentation for you because he did the majority of the work, the research, and put this together. But I just want to point out that he's going to highlight the pertinent information from that report, but there's a lot more detailed information actually in the study that we did. So hopefully you've had a chance to read that, or will have a chance to read that as we go forward. Because again, he's going to do the highlights in this presentation, but there's a lot more information in the actual site study report. Now, we also want to keep this kind of informal and keep you engaged. So as we're going through the presentation, if you have any questions, comments, want to discuss anything more, please just tell us and we'll enter into those. Again, whatever you want to discuss, we can do that here. So before I turn it over to, does anybody need a hard copy of either the presentation or the study?
I think if you have them,
We
issue
do,
those to the board,
absolutely.
please.
Get ready. Is it okay if I come?
So Jonathan, what we have in our packet is the presentation,
It's
the study of which is different. Or
Most of it, they've grabbed a lot of the, yeah, you should have both of them, but you,
them. That's A and B.
right.
B being the PowerPoint, A being the presentation.
Yeah, the presentation condenses, but it really hits on a lot of the meat and potatoes of the study. So part of the proposal or the work, scope of work was to give a final presentation as well. So
got it.
there. Please, absolutely. Thank you very much. And if we'll get one from Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. Not the original. Oh, I got it. Now I can
Oh, yeah, all right. No.
Okay, sir.
All right. Thank you, Patrick. And I'd just like to reiterate, if you have any questions about any of the material I'm going over today, please feel free to raise your hand or stop me in the middle of a sentence. Please do not be shy. So next slide, please. So we were hired to investigate 2 different sites for a new potential building for the Madison County Rescue Squad. The first site, known as the Gate Road site, is located at the intersection of Route 29 and Gate Road. The second site, which will be known as the Fairgrounds Road site, is located along Fairgrounds Road, and this site is about a 31-acre piece in the northwest corner of a larger piece of property that is also home to Hoover Ridge Park. Next slide, please. So these are some of the criteria that we evaluated the site on: the existing conditions of the site, the land cost and availability if the county would have to spend any dollars to acquire the property, the on-site infrastructure required, such as access drives or parking lots that would be necessary, the environmental impacts associated with developing each site, the utility infrastructure that would be required, such as water and sanitary service, the proximity to hotspots of emergency calls within the county, say nursing homes or other points of interest such as schools, and also the potential for future expansion upon the site if the county would one day like to relocate other Madison County public safety operations offices to form sort of a hub of public safety operations offices within the county. And then, of course, the site development costs. So now we'll take a closer look at each of these sites individually. Next slide. So this is the Gate Road site. It is about a 15.5 acre piece of property that is currently owned by the Madison County Rescue Squad. And this site is currently zoned B1 for general business. Since the property is owned by the Rescue Squad, it's understood that Madison County would not incur any costs associated with acquiring the property, and if the site was chosen, that it was ready to be developed. This property does have a 60-foot wide right-of-way section running through the western portion of the site, so this would limit any development that happens on the site to the eastern section of the parcel. This site is also currently undeveloped, and it has a small wooded area in the southwest corner. There's also an existing stream channel in the southwestern section that could limit development. Next slide, please. So this is the Fairgrounds Road site. As I mentioned, it's a smaller 31-acre section of a larger piece of property that's currently owned by the fine folks of the Madison County Board of Supervisors. So due to this property ownership, neither land cost nor availability is a concern for this site. The site is bounded by a stream running along the southern and eastern edges of this area, so that could have some limits on development. The area is currently being used for agricultural purposes and is zoned A1 for agricultural, so it would have to be rezoned if we're going to develop the site. Next slide, please. So we began to look at potential layouts for each of these sites, and for the Gate Road site, a plan set had been previously completed for the new Rescue Squad building by Hinchy and Baines PLC. It is our understanding that if the Gate Road site is chosen for development, then this plan set will be followed for the building. For the Fairgrounds Road site, we decided to use a similar building layout and parking lot layout and developed 3 different layouts for the site. Layout 1, we chose to maximize the visibility of the front of the building from the roadway. However, this did lead to larger earthwork numbers and inflated the cost. Layout 2 was created to find a balance between earthwork and cost by maintaining visibility but trying to cut down on the earthwork numbers. Layout 3 was created to minimize the earthwork numbers, therefore minimizing cost. And now we'll take a closer look at each of these sites.
Could I ask a quick question?
Yes.
What is the importance of visibility?
Reducing the beholder.
Okay.
Wait.
Aesthetic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that, you know,
it
it's
is.
there.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, I mean, if it's going to be a staple within the county, such as a new school or a rescue squad building, something that people take pride in, a point of pride within the county, sometimes counties like to have that visible to people from the road.
Thank you.
So this is the proposed layout for the Gate Road site. The building does have good visibility from Route 29, and the entrance to the site is actually on Gate Road. Everything does fit quite nicely onto this site. However, it does leave little room for future development. And next slide. So here's layout 1 for the Fairgrounds Road site. As you can see, the face of the building runs parallel to Fairgrounds Road to allow for maximum visibility for passing motorists. And here is layout 2. As you can see, the building is located at a slight angle, and this was to maintain the front of the building visibility and try to cut down on some of the earthwork quantities. And here's layout number 3 for the Fairgrounds Road site. And in this site, the building was located to minimize the earthwork values and try to minimize cost of development. So one important aspect of any new development is your stormwater management plan and ensuring that your site meets the VSMP regulations for water quantity and water quality. One typical treatment process to meet the water quantity regulation are extended detention ponds, and you'll find these ponds on many new developments. And these ponds were proposed on the plan set for the Gate Road property. To meet the water quality aspect, the Gate Road site utilized conserved open space, which places area into a conservation easement as land that must remain as open space as defined by DEQ. It should be noted that land in this easement does not allow for future development, so this does further limit the potential for expansion upon that site. The Fairgrounds Road site would most likely use a similar approach, using an extended detention pond to meet the water quantity aspect, and to meet the water quality aspect, a conserved open space easement could be used, or an alternative approach of purchasing stormwater nutrient credits could be used. So an environmental analysis was also performed for each of the sites to determine if there are any potential environmental impacts associated with development, such as stream and wetland impacts, protected species impacts, cultural resources impacts, such as if there were archaeological sites found on the property, and also floodplain impacts. After reviewing the data on the available federal databases, it was determined that the Gate Road site had no unique environmental resources present. However, there could be potential stream impacts if the channel in the southwest portion of the site was disturbed during construction. Similarly, the Fairgrounds Road site had no unique environmental resources, but there could be potential stream and wetland impacts if the channel running along the southern and eastern borders was disturbed. Next slide. So moving on to utility infrastructure. We investigated what it would take to provide utility service to each of the sites. In terms of water and sanitary utility structure, we looked at either public service through the Rapidan Service Authority or private utility service through the use of a well and drain field. We also looked at the electrical infrastructure, telecommunications infrastructure, and natural gas infrastructure. So this map shows the closest existing water infrastructure to both sites and the proposed water infrastructure for each site. The closest water main to the Gate Road site, unfortunately, is 6,000 feet away, so there is no public water service in this area. Therefore, it was determined that the Gate Road site would best be served by an on-site well. However, there is an existing water main in the vicinity of the Fairgrounds Road site. This main would have to be extended approximately 800 feet north along Fairgrounds Road to serve the site. Extending this main would be costly, so it should be noted that if more buildings were located to the site later, they could also utilize this utility. However, if you do just want to serve the proposed rescue squad building, you could install a well, and that would be a much lower cost. Sanitary sewer service is a similar situation. There's no public sanitary sewer service in the vicinity of the Gate Road site, as service does not extend west down Route 29 from the existing treatment plant. Therefore, the Gate Road site would have to be served by a private drain field. For the Fairgrounds Road site, there is an existing sanitary force main running along Fairgrounds Road. This force main could be tied into to provide sanitary service for the site. However, a new run of force main pipe and a new pump station would be required on the site. Once again, this is a more expensive option, so it should be noted that the site could be serviced by a private drain field if preferred. Electrical infrastructure was readily available for both sites. The Rappahannock Electric Cooperative has existing power lines running by both sites, and these lines could easily be tied into to serve the new building. For telecommunications infrastructure, Madison County currently does have plans to install fiber optic cable in the vicinity of the the Fairgrounds Road site. These three options are shown on the map, And at the time this report was put together, a final decision had not been made on which option they were likely to go with. However, all three options do pass the site and would be able to serve the new building. It is my understanding that the county does not have any plans to install fiber in the vicinity of the Gate Road site. So this means that that site would have to be served by a private ISP provider.
Mr. Johnson, I got,
Yes.
okay, so the two, whoops, go back one now. So the two notes that are up there, what did I say? What is the difference between note 1 and note 2? High speed, number 2 says high-speed cable internet and telephone service is available for both the Gate Road and Fairground Road. So what's the issue with installing fiber if you can get high-speed cable internet and telephone service at both places?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, the county is planning on installing by Fairgrounds, but not by Gate Road. And you're asking what the disadvantage is of that site? That would just have to be through a private ISP provider instead of utilizing lines that the county owns.
And what is the advantage of the county owning the fiber?
My understanding was just that it would be more cost effective.
Is that right?
Livingston?
Is that right, Bruce?
Well, I'm thinking that I don't know anything about putting fiber unless it's Brian Gordon. He's talking about putting.
Yeah,
fiber.
Let's talk theory here.
Well, theory, we could get tunnel under 29 and over to the Fairgrounds location.
No, which is better? To
So-
use a private ISP provider or use the future existing fiber that's in the ground that we own?
Using the existing fiber.
No, what's the
May I-
difference?
Well, the difference is with fiber, you're gonna be running you can run gig speeds out there back through it's faster.
Okay.
To where if we were to get Comcast out to, which I don't even know if they can get it out there,
All right.
to the Gatehouse Road site, it's considerably slower, real slower on the upload. So speed, reliability, if you put the Comcast out there, you're gonna have to put in a VPN connection, which can potentially have more problems like we're having with the EMS department at the moment. So I would say you're more stable, you're faster, feeds right into our existing.
So if I may add to that,
Cost against that.
it is, but it also gives you rights. So you heard future potential build out for public safety. You don't have to go back to ask anybody. You just tie off your line because you own the line. The speed, it definitely is night and day between the two, but you have rights. So you can add whichever department you were to move down there later, hypothetical, I know for tonight, versus a Comcast, you're going back adding another business account, or can I, even get it to this point, to this site?
I mean, also the cost of tagging into our existing Lumos connection versus signing a long-term contract with Comcast. So your fiber's your big cost. We already got the service.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So shown here is a summary for the proposed utility infrastructure for each site, with the main differences being the public water and sanitary service, along with the fiber optic and telecommunications infrastructure. And you may notice that I did not touch on natural gas earlier during this presentation. The reason being is that since there is a natural gas transmission line in Madison County, however, there are no service taps off the line, so natural gas is not available for either site. So next, we performed a transportation analysis of each site to determine if any roadway improvements were necessary for development. We began by looking at the existing roadway network and the location of the proposed entrances to each site. We found that the proposed entrance locations for both the Gate Road site and the Fairgrounds Road site both meet the VDOT requirements for intersection spacing and site distance. Next, we used anticipated trip generation numbers to perform a turn lane analysis to determine if a right turn lane or a left turn lane would be required by the entrance to either site. And the results were that no turn lanes were required for either site. And this led us to the conclusion that no roadway improvements would be required for development of either site. So the geographic location of the proposed rescue squad building will also play a role into site selection due to the impact it can have on response times to emergency calls within the service area. We analyzed the frequency of emergency calls received by zip code and also the anticipated travel time to potential hotspots such as nursing homes or points of interest such as schools. Next slide, please. So shown here is a frequency map of the calls received with a larger circle indicating a larger number of calls by zip code. And this data has been compiled over about the past 3.5 years. As you can see, both sites are located within the zip code with the largest frequency of emergency calls. Next slide. So then we began to look at the anticipated response times from each site to these potential hotspots or points of interest, and shown are nursing homes and schools in the area. It was found that the Fairgrounds Roadside generally has shorter response times to these locations. So one other aspect that we've kind of touched on throughout this presentation is the potential for future expansion. The county asked that we look at the potential to relocate other buildings to these sites, say if they want to move the sheriff's department there or an emergency management office, to kind of facilitate the creation of a public safety campus within the county. And next slide, please. So the Gate Road site is limited due to the existing 60-foot right-of-way running through the property and the existing stream in the southern area of the site. After development, these two constraints do not leave much room on the site. However, adjacent parcels may be purchased by the county to provide more room for development. Shown on this map are the undeveloped parcels surrounding the Gate Road site, along with owner information and the assessed property value from the Madison County GIS website. Unfortunately, the availability of these parcels is unknown, and that could present a problem if a particular landowner is unwilling to sell. The Fairgrounds Road site does have potential for future expansion upon the 31-acre area of interest. However, this site is also located by the existing stream running along the southern and eastern boundaries. We assumed a 100-foot stream buffer to account for this, and after removing the area that will be developed for the rescue squad building, that leaves approximately 15.5 acres within the site that could be used for future development. So that brings us to our next point of discussion, the cost to develop each of these properties. And at this point, I'll be turning the presentation back over to Patrick.
So looking at these numbers, I just want to point out that these are just order of magnitude numbers. Please don't look at them and say, boy, this is the gospel, because this is not a bid. As you probably know, everything is in flux right now, but they are based on historical bid data. So we tried to plug in all the unit quantities that we could based on what we know about the site development at this time. And keep in mind, this is just for site development. This has nothing to do with the building or any of the other soft costs that will go along with it. But again, in line with the site assessment, that's what this tells you. So I think Zach pointed out one of the larger costs was the extension of the water and sanitary sewer infrastructure to serve the Gate or the Fairgrounds site. Even if you were to do that, you could go with well and also a private septic system on that, and that brings those two sites a little bit more equal. But still, I did this, and I said at the beginning I wasn't going to offer any opinions or recommendations, but I think I can do that here because they are quantifiable numbers. Is that the Fairgrounds site may cost 20 to 30% more to develop as it is now. Now, having said that, understand that we use the same building prototype on that site that was used on the Gate Road property. There may be a more efficient building that fits on that site. I just want to throw that out to you so you don't say, okay, this is definitely going to cost 20 to 30% more depending on how much infrastructure development we decide to do. So again, just please keep that in mind as you, and a lot of times one of the things that's mostly considered, of course, is the cost, and that's a huge part of it. So next slide, please, with that. Does anybody have any other questions, concerns, issues? Mr. Jackson, are you confused about some stuff that we can clarify for you?
I really want to ask you, which one do you recommend?
Sorry, I can't answer that question, sir.
So it's, oh no, that was well laid out. I have not looked at the detailed study, but I assume among Noah and Jonathan, the staff and the board, I'm an accountant by education, so it's going to be some stuff checked off on the debit side and the credit side, and that looks like the only way to go through this, because every time I would get to the next slide, and then when I was reviewing it this afternoon at home, I'd say, okay, it's Gate Road. Oh, okay, it's Fairground. Then I'd go back to Gate Road for something. So I need to put it all down and look at it as a whole.
I think the interesting comment, and just something that's worth mentioning, is what you're saying about using the same building building style and development platform on both sites, and maybe it will change and curtail, or it certainly will change and curtail if we were to pick one of the other sites or either one of the two sites. And no, you think that's the platform to work off of?
That building.
The same building, yeah, exactly.
So I guess one of the biggest questions we got to answer is whether we want to go with the public safety campus in the future. And I mean, Orange County is doing that now, and I talked to Mr. Frame, and he's the chair of the Board of Supervisors in Orange, and he said that's something they should have done a long time ago. But that was just in passing. That's as far as we went. So I think it'd be good to talk to him or any of them on the Orange County Board of Supervisors, find out what played into their decision to go that route, right?
The one that I think about is Culpeper, and we went up there and toured it with Ms. Hoffman was there, and Jack, and John Shearer set it up, and they basically have a campus as well. It seems like that's the evolving style of all of this. I mean, who is Fuller Limited Liability Company? Does anybody know who that is?
I don't know if it's Mr. Ash.
That is probably who it is.
Speculation for the record. Get part of the property nearby.
So, yeah,
Mr. Jackson, may I?
please, why not?
I just had a quick question because, my concern is, working from directors of the board, but realizing the trips, I guess, analysis of traffic, but also the type of traffic. So when you get to Fairground Road, you know what's in that corridor, schools. So was any consideration given in that data of turn lanes, and think if you go out there in the mornings, sheriff department, hats off to them, have to direct traffic, this whole unloading, reloading of kids. Was that given consideration the time of day?
I think we did do that in the analysis. So we do a trip generation, and the way we looked at this was more from the VDOT standpoint, not necessarily from what's realistic out there, because those are some things you just have to look at and say, okay, what do we need to do here? But we looked at the VDOT warrants based on the trip generation, the type of facility, the existing traffic counts, which again, sometimes they don't take into account the 30-minute influx of traffic when schools and buses and that kind of thing let out. And thank goodness there's an officer there to do traffic control. So that's, somewhat, taken care of. But again, we just, in this study, just looked at the warrants. So in either site, there's no warrant for any turn lanes, additional lanes, any of that thing that stuff that you have to spend money on.
Well, anybody else have questions, comments, thoughts? It would seem like, and thank you all for getting back to us, making a great presentation.
Yes, sir.
Something we need to review, and we know the situation currently with the volunteer rescue squad. We'll see how that materializes. I guess the next direction to go is we need to have some internal talks on pros and cons that y'all have kind of laid out.
And if you do have any other questions in the future, concerns, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'd be glad to come up and meet again and talk a little bit more as you start to formulate your questions and concerns. And again, just let us know. We'd be glad to discuss it further.
Anybody else? Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No, that was good. Batting well with our guest. All right. Old business. We don't have any. Moving on to new business. Route 636 River Road paving request. Mr. Weekly?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the board gives the direction to VDOT regards of requests and using funds. Particularly the request came from Mr. Zeed. I hope I'm not butchering his name. He is a resident on River Road that connects Route 29 as you cross the Robinson River at 29 South up to Clore Road. He would like to make a request to have that road paved. As you know, your 6-year secondary road plan is really what that purpose is for. But before I would get back to any residents, the preference of the board, I need to bring this before your attention. I will emphasize that one of the good advantages that VDOT has is a rural rustic program that allows your dollars to be stretched further. You have done that with various roads in the past. So we all know 6-year road plan can become 30-year road program. No offense to VDOT, it's just availability of funds. So this request was brought to me. My job is to get it to you so I can give proper response back to the citizen. That can be as easy as, sir, please come during the 6-year road plan comment period and let them know I made it aware or brought awareness to the board.
Has anybody checked what the traffic count on this road is?
I have not. I can do that, sir. I realized that if you looked at residents, and I did talk to Mr. Coppets, Billy, who lives on this road, it's difference between the residents. This road sees a lot more presence. I appreciate people wanting recreation, get into the Robinson River. That's a lot of traffic that comes down this road. They're just pulling over to the side, having a little fun, hopefully not littering. But there's more traffic beyond residency. And sure, I'm sure FedEx or UPS, they're aware of, hey, I can connect to this road going this way. But if you want a traffic count, I can surely bring that back in lieu of any secondary road consideration.
It would seem like we need to check traffic count, just say, and I know VDOT has a list they give us every year with the 6-year plan. But in turn, we got to check the age of that traffic count because some of them are outdated. But I would think that this road wouldn't be just for paving. I would think that it's one of these, rural rustic type of deals that still is on the 6-year plan. And we did that, May of last year or previously. So, I mean, it would seem like maybe we should pass along to them that we're looking into it. We can ask VDOT about it. But it would be something that we could take up in April and see what the list has on there.
Okay. And I can email you ahead of time to let you know the traffic count for this road. But I think that's correct, sir. I'll go back to the resident.
Hold on. We're going
You got it?
You have
this 6-year plan for it too?
I just want to see what this date.
Let's bring it up.
It's got all the roads in there.
On all the
Yeah, on all
county.
the county roads.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's on there. Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Yeah.
River Road.
I can find it for the emphasis. I know you got a 5 p.m. public hearing, but I can
Yeah.
bring that traffic count back. I mean, primarily what I'm hearing from the board is they need to come back during the appropriate time in April to be considered for the 6-year secondary road plan and or rural rustic.
All right. Well, bring it back and go from there. Let's see what the traffic count is and we can go. You'll send a response back to Mr. Zeed.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else got anything on this one? All right. Do y'all want to go to the public hearing, or do you want to try to do the, how long is the opioid?
It won't take that long.
Resolution
Mr.
gonna
Gregg,
last.
you want to lead that, sir?
Let's do that.
Got it.
Hand him the mic, Bruce.
Yeah, this is
If
the
you would.
resolution, the $64 question. Okay.
All right. Mr. Chairman, you have before you a resolution that I believe is appropriate. This is to pass the participation in the settlement of the opioid litigation. The biggest question the board is likely to have is how much money are we going to get? That answer has not come to us yet. The settlements have not yet been approved. And there is they've been approved by the federal district courts. But the next level is the Commonwealth of Virginia is taking a portion of these funds. And after they have taken that portion, we will know what we are getting. We need to pass this before the end of the year if we want to participate in these resolutions. Otherwise, we are kind of going it on our own. My recommendation is that we pass the resolution as submitted.
Any questions from Mr. Gregg or Mr. Weekly? It states a resolution of Madison County Board of Supervisors approving of the county's participation in the proposed settlement of opioid-related claims against Madison, Cardinal Health, and Amerisource. How do you say that one? What is that one?
AmerisourceBergen. I'll take the bush.
Well, there you
Correct.
go. Good work down there.
That is the correct pronunciation.
Very good. Janssen and their related corporate entities, and directing the county attorney and/or county's outside counsel to execute the document necessary to effectuate the county's participation in the settlement. What do y'all want to do?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the resolution as titled, as read by the chairman.
Second.
All right, motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you, Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. And I apologize. I took the 120 seconds.
No, thank you, sir. Mr. Chairman, you're still teed up. Perfect time for the other appointment if you'd like, sir. Your pleasure.
Oh, well, very good. We need to appoint Jonathan to the Rappahannock Rapidan Regional Commission. Ms. Hoffman's our liaison there. Is that right, Ms. Hoffman? Yeah. And they meet in Culpeper. Jonathan's been through the list that Hobbs was serving on. You think this is a good one for you, Jonathan?
Yes, sir. And I already participated in a county administrator roundtable they have monthly too. Very effective group.
All right. Anybody have problems with Jonathan being part of this?
Charlotte, is that considered a board?
It is a board, yes.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move that we appoint Jonathan Weekly to the RRRC board.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. Cigarette tax hearing. Mr. Weekly, would you like to explain this whole thing?
Absolutely, sir. And just reminder, and maybe this is your housekeeping you prefer or myself, but there will be a public hearing for consideration of a cigarette tax, not only for an ordinance to join the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board, which has been formed. Originally, when we advertised, it was asking for Madison to consider forming that board. That board has been formed. It required only 6 localities. They are up to 7. And I believe you have Mr. Blunt on the phone too. He's the deputy. He's the deputy director of Thomas Jefferson Planning District as you tee him up on this call. So for consideration tonight, the public hearing is for Madison to consider joining that body, which is the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board. If you so choose to implement a cigarette tax, the General Assembly has given the counties the authority. It used to be just townships. But they have given counties the authority to implement a cigarette tax. So that's step 1. Do you want to implement a tax? 2, if you want to, how do you administer that? Do we want to do it at the local level? We have Mr. Daniel, our Commissioner of Revenue, here tonight. Or would you like to administer it through a regional effort, which is what was advertised, which is the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board? So that's what's been advertised for consideration. The other component of this, if the board wants to entertain, you have a draft cigarette tax levy before you as well. We advertise just like you do with real estate taxes. For this tax, the General Assembly is allowed for a maximum consideration or implementation of 40 cents per pack. So naturally, whatever you advertise for, you cannot go above. So that's why we did not advertise lower. We're not trying to virtue signal anything. It's just it allows you the opportunity, if you're going to consider at the max or less, that way you can't climb. That is the maximum set by the state. So that's the purpose for the public hearing. There were in past board meetings within the last 12 months, I believe, the Board of Supervisors gave direction to go down this path to at least consider. We have done that. We brought for you tonight as a consideration of, one, does the board want to consider implementing the tax? Two, how do you wish to do that locally or through the group? If it's through the group, you would have to approve the resolution, or I believe it's the memorandum, that's in the packet. And if the board wants to consider a rate, what that rate should be, I have some thoughts on that based on information I shared with you last time on revenue projections. And just a key fact, the town of Madison is considering this, but the town of Madison would have to pass their own to be considered. And I also believe the newly formed tax board would have to approve that. Now that that board has been formed, there will be buy-in for the county if you choose to join the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board. They had to stand up an administrator to administer the program. There's equipment and expenses included in that. Madison's buy-in portion is somewhere between $8,000 to $9,000. I would put it out there that whether you chose to move forth to join that tonight, next week, 2 years from now, you do have the option to join at any time, and you have the option to opt out. But if you join later, there's still going to be buy-in costs. Traditionally, as any of these regional concepts, you just don't come in cleanly. If others have paid their startup costs, you have startup costs as well. I would like to share, if I may, Mr. Chairman, the projected revenues, just so also the public gets a flavor of this as well. If you went in at the max, and again, this is the Thomas Jefferson Planning District numbers. If Madison chose to implement the maximum 40 cents per pack, you're looking at a projected annual revenue of $125,000. For full disclosure, if you acted in the near future, that full 125 projected revenue would not be realized in this year. We would be coming in essentially January 1. So if you passed it sometime soon, they have to get en route to get the stamps at the state level. They get that to the distributors, and that's how it gets to the vendor. So that you would realize only half of that anticipated if you went to the max. But a full year, assuming if you did this come July 1, 2022, a full year at 40 cents per pack is somewhere in the neighborhood of projected 125K. If you slice that to say a 20 cents per pack, then you're half of that. So you're roughly in the 60-some thousand. I would say if you are going to consider it, I would not recommend going below the 20 cents because really you're defeating the purpose to administer the program and receive any revenue to help offset any other cost or what you may deem appropriate for the use of those funds. Again, I believe you may have Mr. Blunt on the line, the Deputy Director for Thomas Jefferson Planning District. Before you would bring him in, I'm not sure if Mr. Gregg, our attorney, has any comments on this matter.
Mr. Gregg?
I have no further comment other than to say that this is a potential revenue source that has been identified. I know that the board is always looking for additional revenue sources to alleviate the burdens on the real estate taxes and the personal property taxes. Some localities are passing the tax at the maximum level. Others are going considerably less than that. And the enforcement of the program would be turned over to this regional authority, which I think would reduce the amount of manpower in the Commissioner of Revenue's office to track this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Daniels, you have anything to add to this?
Nothing more to add.
We're gonna have to get more microphones.
Nothing more to add. I think Mr. Gregg's assessment's correct. We're limited in our resources staff-wise, and I do believe the regional group could probably more efficiently process the cigarette tax.
Oh no, your son was in there. He looked like a go-getter.
We can go after him if you would. If you want a 4-year-old to.
All right.
Brian, I got one quick question for you.
Certainly.
You may or may not have the answer, but so reading through this resolution, the ordinance, so the costs that we would have to pay are on a pro rata share of the packs of cigarettes we would sell, the way I read it. But I'm surprised that there's not a fixed cost involved in there somewhere, because if everybody joined the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board and they only went with 20 cents or whatever, the board has still got a certain amount of fixed costs that they've got to cover. So, has anybody got
That may be appropriate. Mr. Gregg surely may have some thoughts, but you also have the deputy director on the line.
Okay.
He's on standby for
All right.
these type of calls.
That may be the best.
Mr. Blunt, thank you for being on the phone. Let me hear from Mr. Gregg, our attorney, real quick, and then we're going to go right to you.
I defer to Mr. Blunt.
Mr. Blunt.
Mr. Jackson, can
yes.
you put the microphone, sir, or Ms.
Yeah.
Hoffman?
Sorry, Ms. Hoffman.
Please, I'm sorry, sir.
Mr. Blunt, thank you for being with us. Did you hear the last question by chance?
I believe it had to do with fixed costs that would be ongoing.
No,
We do.
no, I understand the startup costs, Mr. Blunt. What I was saying is, when counties or towns or whatever if they say, we're going to go with 20 cents a pack instead of 40 cents. Well, if everybody went with 20 cents that was in this group, then is there any fixed cost to running the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board?
Yes. Yeah. So we and again, thank you for allowing me to join you remotely. And Mr. Weekly, appreciate your explanation. You did a very good job of laying out a lot of the particulars related to the board and the levy. We did have some initial discussions in working with locality staff, and including some finance staff, about how to account for those ongoing expenses. And we were initially looking at that as being tied to collected revenues. But as you all have indicated, you could have locality at 40 cents, you could have 20 cents, or anywhere in between, or even less. So that's when we switched to doing a calculation based on packs sold, and then the ratio of packs that would be sold in Madison County versus the rest of the region and the membership. So the expenses that we have right now as ongoing, and again, we're just getting into this for the first time, so numbers, they are what they are right now. Basically, the ongoing expenses just relate to the cost for a staff member, that's salary and benefits. And then as it relates to the enforcement and compliance piece, there would be some cost for the vehicle or mileage on an ongoing basis. So that is incorporated into our figures, and then that would be apportioned among the member localities based on the number of packs sold. So if Madison County was only selling 5% or 10% of the packs sold, throughout the board's region, then your share of the ongoing administrative cost would only be 5 or 10% based on your sales.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Blunt. And how many other localities have already joined the cigarette tax board?
Yes, sir. To date, there are 7 localities total. That is 6 counties in the region, and also the city of Charlottesville.
And all of them have gone through this already? The public hearing?
All of them have had a public hearing on the joining the board. There has been one other county that has already had a public hearing that is tax rate. But I'm anticipating that the remainder of the counties will be having probably next month. We'll have a public hearing and set a levy rate at that time, with the exception of Albemarle County, which has scheduled its public hearing for October 20th, which is next week. And then the city of Charlottesville has been implementing the tax already, so they do not have to do anything with regard to their tax rate.
At this point, have we advertised for both the agreement to join the cigarette tax board and to set the levy?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right. The ones that have set the levy already, Mr. Blunt, what rate are they at?
Well, it's just the one, and the staff recommendation for the Board of Supervisors at the time was a rate of 30 cents, and that corresponded to the rate that was already in place in 2 independent cities in that county that were already implementing the tax. However, the board chose to go with a lower rate of 15 cents per pack.
And that's got to be Albemarle.
That's
Augusta.
Who is it? Augusta?
Yeah, it's
All right,
Augusta.
there you go. All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Mr. Blunt, if I may jump in. So the counties, and I got this from Mr. Blunt, so I'm still in his correspondence. The 6 counties that was mentioned who has joined the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board is counties of Albemarle, Augusta, Fluvanna, Greene, Nelson, and Orange, and now the city of Charlottesville that we just learned. The one that has adopted the rate, it was recommended 30, they adopted 15 cents, as Mr. Blunt just mentioned, that is Augusta County.
All right. Anybody else have questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, Mr. Blunt, I'm looking at the paragraph on the levy and rate. And as I read it, it says at a rate of whatever for each cigarette sold. So really the number, if you wanted 40 cents a pack, you'd put what, 2 cents in that document?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, and it's, yeah, I know we talked about the amount of tax per pack, but that per cigarette language is actually the way it is in the code.
Yeah.
So we chose to include that so that it would be the same.
Kind of odd since somewhere in the law it says you can't sell cigarettes by one at a time.
Right.
But
Right.
They did that change at country store. I'm talking about a bad habit. You can buy them. Used to be about the same. So they changed that.
Oh, I got one more question.
That's a trivia for the night.
So, Mr. Blunt, how and when can the tax rate be changed? Is that on an annual basis when we do all the other taxes?
That would be your prerogative, I guess, because this is your local ordinance and your tax rate as it pertains to Madison County. As I said, all of the others will have to do the same thing. So as I think it's proposed, it takes effect January 1st. I would probably defer to your attorney as to how often and the timing by which you could, re-advertise to have a public hearing to amend your ordinance or to adopt your ordinance to have a different rate.
But that would be up to us as a county as opposed to the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board.
Correct.
Okay.
There is no regional tax. These are all local taxes. And that's why I think we'll probably end up with different tax rates, perhaps among the localities that are members of the board, which we will work through.
All right.
So they collect the revenue and send it back to you once a month.
Mhm.
But you should say, and I'd be curious if Mr. Gregg, I say if he has any comment, but you would want, this is revenue, right? So when you do your budget, you need to advertise while Stephanie and others come in here, hey, please give me the rate so we can build a budget, we can get it out there. So my recommendation, and Mr. Gregg may have some thoughts, would be you would look at that each year. With mines on this, you cannot go above what the state has set. So unless the state says, hey, let's move it to 60 cents for localities consideration, then you can consider raising it. That would assume you come in at the highest rate for all fairness. But I would suggest you consider it every year like you do the rest of your revenue, sir.
But really, we could change it, the board of supervisors could change it whenever they felt like it, as long as they go through the public hearing process. There you go.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any other comments, thoughts before we open the public hearing to the public?
I'm sure going to lay the ground rules 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah. Try 3 minutes. Let everybody else go and then you can speak again. Yes?
There's a public comment. Is that now the time?
Oh, yeah. The public comment is open.
For the hearing.
Or for the public hearing to levy a cigarette tax and potentially join the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board.
Ready?
Yep, sure.
Judd Buchanan says, what would the money for cigarette tax be used for? What does the tax hurt? And in addition, 32% of households that smoke on a daily basis make under $20K a year. These people won't quit. They will just forego food, medical care, etc.
All right. Other public comment. The floor is open. Public comment. Anybody have public comment on this? I did receive an email in opposition to this. I want to get this right. It's caught me off guard. From
Mr. Weekly, this is David. I dropped off for some reason, even though I was not moving at all. So I don't know if I missed any questions or anything. So I had to dial back in.
That's who was calling us.
Mr. Blunt, we are currently in the public hearing, the public comment portion of the public hearing. The board may go back to the board and have some follow-up, but the chairman has now opened it for public comment. If you don't mind,
Okay,
please
great.
stand by, sir. I greatly
Yes,
appreciate it.
my apologies for interrupting.
I've received an email from NATO, which stands for the National Association of Tobacco Outlets, not the other NATO. And that's Thomas Bryant, who's the executive director, and he says that this will hurt people who sell cigarettes, and he's in opposition of it. Other public comment. Other public comment. Anybody else, Livingston?
Nope, just Mr. Buchanan.
All right. Back to the board. What do y'all want to do? Y'all want to go ahead? The recommendation is to go with the board. So I'd assume that we need to have, if that's the direction we're going to go, we need a motion stating that we want to join the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board. And that will be, excuse me, that is going to be, what ordinance number will that be, Mr. Weekly?
We can use, essentially, I just say today's date. I know that's a weird way, but it's a good way to track it. Mr. Gregg, if they passed it, can you bring that up? You got that up on the screen? Yes. So we would just plug in on the screen, sir, what we have, just plug in the ordinance number, today's date, and that would cover. I don't want to mislead you. It says formation. They've done that, but it's important you pass that ordinance as drafted if you choose to do so, because it lists the counties. So you will be signing off by your county, sir.
All right.
So just ordinance number 101221.
Is that so? All right, that's fine.
So look at the fourth whereas down. It says, whereas the Board of Supervisors wish to authorize the formation of the board with the county of, should that say Madison? Should that be
County of Madison as a member.
Yeah, so you would fill in Madison County. So basically with these blanks, you would just fill in Madison.
Oh, that's not asking for all the other counties, so.
Yeah, if you go down to
Just
the
all
bottom,
of them.
sir, next
Oh,
next
okay.
one, Alan, please. You'll see when you get into the agreement, it lists the counties for considerations. Of course, anyone else can jump in, but these are the 8 counties that are being considered. And again, this was prior to they formed the board, but still it's the same concept.
Counties and city. Yeah. All right, what do y'all want to do on this one? No, the rate will be the next one.
So, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. Thank you, Mr. Berry. Our last,
That's what I'm
the
looking
last
for.
one we're tracking is 2021-9. So this will be 2021-10. Good work,
There
sir. Thank you.
That's what I'm looking for. I'll do it. All right, we have ordinance 2021-10, and it's an ordinance approving the formation of a joint entity to be known as the Blue Ridge Cigarette Tax Board and bestowing on such entity all powers necessary and proper for the performance of its duties as provided by law.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. So, and the single cigarette is known as a Lucy. That is what it's called. That is what it's called. We've been talking about 40 cents. Do we need to set the rate based on per cigarette?
Mr. Gregg?
40 cents per pack is, or whatever the
Ample.
amount per pack is.
There you go.
So I have one other additional question, and forgive me, I should have covered bases with Mr. Gregg, so this is my apologies. There's nothing left to really wordsmith. If they're considering the draft levy, it's basically plugging in the amount that they're setting plus the name of the location.
Something else.
Or do you feel okay with that? Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we set the rate at 40 cents a pack.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gregg, do we need to set the ordinance? There is an ordinance number. We can easily make that ordinance 2021-11.
11.
Okay.
No, just a point of order before we go down. Something for the board to consider. You can certainly set the rate at 40 cents. You can choose a lower number if that's what you choose. Procedurally, the way to do that would be for someone to either for this motion to fail on a vote and then a second vote, or someone could move to amend it. You can do it either way.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gregg. We do have a motion on the floor and a second. Further discussion on this? I guess the general discussion. You think 40 cents where we're at?
I think so. I mean, I've done the math. You know, I mean, a 2-pack a day smoker which is a lot, would cost you about $30 more a month. 1 pack, $15 a month. $125,000 it's getting close to a penny, isn't it, Kevin?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's, you know, I've thought about this for the last few days, and that's my reason for
It's a lot of
throwing that out.
defibrillators.
What's that, Cheryl? Yeah.
All right.
I mean, it is, I'm sorry.
No, please.
And it is a voluntary tax. So just like, you know, meals tax, you know, if you don't want to pay the 8% meals tax, then don't eat in a restaurant, you know, so.
All right. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, that's taken care of. Public comment.
Luke?
Yes, ma'am. Oh, hold on. We're gonna get you a mic, Miss Montgomery. Apologize.
Thank you, sir. Don't forget the
No,
circle.
it's Yeah, I'm going back.
Eleanor Montgomery, and I just want to say that the Hurt and Profit site study presentation was one of the best I've ever heard. It's very well done.
Thank you, Ms. Montgomery. All right, other public comment. Livingston, do we have any more on there? That has to be like our first or second public comment on that platform since we started this.
Yeah, 8 people watching.
Yeah, it's a big crowd for us. All right. Other public comment. All right, we're going back to information and correspondence. Mr. Weekly, you want to talk about the schools, I guess?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The CIP, the Joint CIP Committee has met recently to look at, a lot of them was school projects. They have identified some paving work, some sidewalks, and a little bit of storm that will need to be addressed at the primary school. I believe it was the board's direction to send back to the CIP, how do you proceed, with one of my follow-ups being check bond counsel, how bond proceeds can be used. I did check in with Sands Anderson, who was bond counsel for the loan that was done back in summer of 2020. And the response was that they can use bond proceeds for that. I sent that over to Ms. Graham, copied all board members and Mr. Gregg as well, so you're aware of, because that not only affects projects for them, if you all may elect to use projects, you need to know how you can use those funds as well. So the request was for, we should have kept them here so they could have spoke on it, Hurt and Profit to come back. It looked like maybe a PER to really do some detailed work on to establish what paving looks like. So they would do some core sampling of the pavement to establish the depth of the existing pavement, soil conditions, all those other factors, which will ultimately, could lead to a design. So this is the preliminary engineering work. It's just under $28K, and I'm sorry, sir, I don't have that number in front of me.
It's $27,400. And Hurt and Profit is going to do site and stormwater and construction plans. So that we can go out to bid essentially for that project, which will completely wrap up, it'll completely wrap up the primary school renovation. Right now, and I think Cardi's mentioned it multiple times, is that the water runs back into the building. Seems foolish to not proceed down this direction and protect what we just invested a lot of money into.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may add, a lot of this is time sensitive if you do want to move on this project. So you can have a review who it needs to go to. It needs to go to DEQ and others. Is there required storm retention ponds? We don't know. It's also the schedule. If school lets out, school comes back in, trying to capitalize on the work being done. So there was the reason behind momentum, but we did our due diligence with the bond proceeds, which was the important factor.
And the CIP committee, they didn't bring this up last night at the school board, but CIP committee, Anagram sent out a straw poll on that, and everybody seems to be okay with the 27.4.
Now, I did not bring up, and maybe the CIP members on this board, I know at the last joint meeting, it was discussed to possibly consider the projects I put out there that Mr. Barry had obtained quotes back in 2020. So if you have a desire to move forth on that, I don't think, my opinion is that we are as time sensitive as a school schedule. But definitely if that's something that you want to give me direction on, just let me know whatever meeting and we'll move forward. We can at least freshen up those quotes. So if and when you want to give it consideration, we'll have new numbers. But if you want me to take any direction on that, just please advise and we'll be happy to start on that.
At this point, we have identified deficiencies in the parking lot. It seems like in parking lots across the county. The general direction earlier by Mr. Hobbs and all of us, the school board, CIP, everybody, school superintendent, was maybe there was some economies of scale by doing a substantial amount of parking lots all at the same time. What we really realized is, turns out when you study parking lots, all parking lots need work. Need to go back and get some prices on them because it's just going to be an overwhelming cost for what we drive on and park our cars in. And some of our stuff, frankly, I think that there's a lot of other things that we need to address other than where we drive. Sorry. We should go back though. I think going and obtaining quotes is relatively cheap process. And it'll kind of put some numbers with things that we know we need to identify or put towards CIP in the future. Getting some prices work. Everybody good on that? All right. Everybody good on anagrams going along with herd and profit on the 27.4?
Yeah, I am. I got one thing I really need to be clear on. Okay, using the term bond proceeds, is that really the debt proceeds that we took? Because we didn't issue bonds. That the last round of debt that we took on, they weren't bonds. So are we talking about the true bond proceeds from way back, or the debt proceeds?
Let me try to pull up because I'm not an accountant.
I think that's
so
we should
normally.
use the right term.
So I will say that this went through the IDA.
It did, yeah.
So and generally they hold back a bond. I'm sure it's a percentage of the project. It's what
Oh,
that is.
that.
But sir, to answer your question fully, I'll be happy to pass that along to Sands Anderson because I'm not an expert to speak to it. But that's generally what they do. If you run it through an IDA, you withhold a bond to cover things, and usually it's not apples to apples. So a bond language will specify you can use it for purpose of X. To our advantage here, it was more broad brush that would allow you to utilize those instead of just returning in full because those proceeds were.
We're talking about two different things then. I was talking about the financing we got to do these projects. We did not sell bonds to do.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. It's a bonding mechanism.
Yes. Great question. Great question. Absolutely great question. This just as general, this is just information and correspondence. The school, they ask us, at CIP, do you want this to be approved by both boards and all this? This is the school's project. They're the ones that are going to take care of it and get it accomplished. Having a working relationship so that information's smooth between us and the schools, that works well for everybody. That's where we're at. You got any other information and correspondence?
That's all I'm tracking right now, sir.
All right, I got not information and correspondence. I got another problem. We got to do something about this microphone thing. I mean, making Sean Gregg get up, we should get some microphones. I mean, Livingston, you gave us a quote and gave me a rough quote to add a couple mics. I mean, what do we have to do to get this thing working a little bit better?
Well, since we talked, I had them come in here and we looked at it. I think we can add 3 more microphones. And we'd like to find a way to build your confidence to where we use GoToMeeting for people to call in. If they've got their own, if they got a stable internet connection, then we can get away from having to put a microphone on the phone and things of that nature. But I would say that for 2,000-3,000, we can beat this thing up, and it probably would come in more around the 2,000.
How much are 3 microphones to add to this thing?
Well, we'd have to go get another one of these, I think.
Yeah, all those. I think we should get all portable ones and then give one to Sean Gregg when he's sitting here. Finance will probably end up needing one. And then also to make people walk all the way across the room. And I don't see, maybe my lack of formality.
We can, so the podium.
I'm trying to do it on the cheap.
Well, that's what I was
sorry.
getting ready to go, sir. So if the desire is to be symmetrical or aesthetics, we can do another one of those. If you want to plan around budget, that's fine. We can simply set a lectern up there in the intermediate until you decide if you want to fund another one of those. But we can put another mic. Folks should come to the mic so we can hear them, but we can put another
Can
one.
we not steal another one of these stands from the music department at the schools?
I mean, like,
and just put a
the thing we got right there with the in the back of the room.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
We can get a little
let's do
lectern.
that.
And just a regular mic stand,
Get
like
some of those type of
rock bands
mics.
use.
Let's move on. How much are those mics?
I would say for what you just said to do, we're looking at about $1,000 to have those 3 mics, probably under. But we do have the room on the existing mixer, but we'll be taking away the room mic, which I don't think is doing so good right now. And then we're wired for these little audio mics. So long story short, we can hook up 3 more mics without having to upgrade the mixer. If we want any more than that, we're going to have to get another mixer.
So we can get a mobile one from Mr. Greg, we can have another one available at Earth Finance, and we can put a lectern over here so the general public can go down Ida Avenue.
Make this
Does that
easy
work?
for people.
All right, we know what we gotta
Is
do.
everybody okay with this? I'm sorry
Yeah.
to make the county spend money on something like that, but just stupid.
I'll have them here next week.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Thank you, Lois. Anybody else got any information and correspondence? And we don't have a closed session this evening. What's the pleasure of the board? Oh, no, please send him an email thanking him. He was a wealth of information. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Thank y'all.
I hesitated to bring it up during the official meeting. I've got a Mr. Microphone. I haven't used it in about 25 years.
What is
It
it?
requires 2D batteries. It's just a handheld.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
I'll try to-
What was that, during your karaoke days or what? Yeah.
Mr. Microphone.
It was made by Ron
Yeah.
How you doing? That's right, yeah.
Well, yeah, I heard that too. But so I looked it up today, and nothing's on there about it yet.
That's the concern. Yeah, you gonna take this back to her? Oh, sweet.
Um,
No. She'd be mad at me. I don't want to make her mad. Totally payable. So they're still there.